Welcome back to the Intentional Household Podcast. I'm your host, Laura Wilson, and today we're having a real conversation about something that affects so many families: divorce. This isn't just about legal documents and court dates. Divorce changes the way your household operates, impacts your emotional well-being, and challenges you to rebuild routines, finances, and relationships. That's why I wanted to bring together two incredible guests who help people navigate divorce with clarity and support. Andrea Klein is the Director of Operations at the Riley Divorce and Family Law Firm. She guides clients through the process from start to finish, making sure they know their rights and avoid costly mistakes. Michelina Cusano is a certified divorce specialist and divorce coach who works with individuals, helping them process the changes and move forward with confidence. Through her work, she inspires clients to speak their inner truth, reclaim their personal power, and break free from generational patterns so they can live authentically and thrive. Together, they've seen firsthand what works, what doesn't, and how the right support can completely change the experience. Andrea and Michelina, thank you so much for being here. To start, I'd love to know what led each of you into specializing in supporting individuals who are going through divorce.
Absolutely. Thanks, Laura, for having us. Really excited to be here today. So I think what really prompted me to get into this area, this space, is really just my own personal experience with divorce. Kind of make a joke about it at consultations sometimes, but I've actually been divorced twice myself. So just to give you a little bit of context, my first marriage ended in divorce just around the time my son turned 1. I was in my early 20s at the time. And so I basically spent the last 18 years essentially navigating issues that most divorcing families face, like co-parenting, blending families, trying to become financially independent, support, all of those kinds of things. But I think what really, I would say, woke me up was my second divorce in 2021. My first divorce, I was, still kind of new into the whole, career. I wasn't really established yet, but the second divorce, it really kind of brought me to my knees, I would say, and it really helped me develop my belief in me and what I'm really capable of. I had to overcome a ton of fears, fear of losing my home, moving schools for my son who's just starting high school, and navigating those teenage years, with raising a son on my own. That was definitely one of the hardest parts of my second divorce. And I would say, going through that, both divorces were very amicable. I was, able to develop a lot of resilience because of my own divorces. And I worked in the divorce space throughout that time, that entire time between my first and second divorce and beyond. So I spent a lot of time kind of just more so coaching clients on how to, prepare for your divorce, what kinds of things are important, what to focus on. And so I think really all my personal experience with divorce coupled with my professional experience is really what led me down this career path.
Yeah, I imagine people can certainly appreciate the fact that you've been through that as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. People, especially when we're in consultations, that's one of the first things I say to make people feel comfortable is that, I've been here. I've been here more than once and I get it. I totally do understand what you're going through.
Yeah, exactly. And Michelina, how about for you?
So similar to Andrea, it just came directly from my own experience. Since I've been a young teen, I've always been drawn to like self-improvement and helping others. But when I went through my own divorce, everything changed for me. I felt completely isolated. I couldn't see a way forward. I just knew deep down, like it was just annoying. I needed to get out. And like many other women that I've spoken to since, I stayed silent about the struggles in my marriage. I was afraid. I was afraid of my spouse. I was afraid of being judged. And I was embarrassed about what was happening behind closed doors. And over time, the person that I was married to also started to slowly isolate me from my family and the few friends that I had. And they began to drift away. They were so uncomfortable about being around him, being around us. And honestly, it became awkward for everybody. And I just found myself completely alone. I remember the moment though, that everything shifted. And I remember it like it was yesterday. And I was sitting on my matrimonial bed and I looked up and I said, I don't know if there's a God, an Allah, a Buddha, a Krishna, a universe, a Tao, but if there is, and you can hear me, please help me get out of here alive. And if you do, I promise to help other women and children. And that promise became my purpose. It's why I do the work that I do today, helping individuals navigate the pain and the confusion that comes with separation and divorce, and guiding them towards reclaiming their power and their lives back.
Michelina, that's amazing. And I'm sure now that you're on the other side of it, you can reflect back and just commend your old self for going through all that and being on the other side and being proud of yourself back then.
Yeah. You know, when I tell the story, like before, if you caught me like a year, 2 years right after being separated, I would heave because it was so toxic and volatile. And the trauma was still in my body. But you hear me talking about my story now, and I'll retell the story like it happened to somebody else. Like I'm not emotionally charged anymore. And that's where I love to see my clients get to as well.
Yeah, I love that. So Andrea, you help individuals with the legal framework. So I'd love to know, for individuals who are just starting the divorce process, what are the first legal steps they should be taking?
Well, I would say the first thing that you want to do, even before you start the legal process, is start gathering financial documentation.
Okay.
Because it's going to be needed, whatever route you go, whether it's mediation, arbitration, court, separation agreement, negotiations, you're always going to need to exchange financial disclosure. And what we always say to people at the very beginning is your date of separation is an extremely important date. That is what is considered your valuation date for family law purposes, right? So you want to start to gather documents, things like pension statements, if you're on a pension, showing what your assets were on that date of separation, what your liabilities are. Do you have credit card debt? Do you have joint debt? Do you have, a line of credit that maybe you share? You need to maybe open another bank account that's your own. Like those are the kinds of things you want to start doing. Because as I say, the beginning steps of a divorce, and often one of the steps that a lot of people don't like is the exchanging of financial disclosure, because people feel, well, why do I have to do this? It's amicable, it's easy. Like, why do I need to go through this process? But it's really important because you have to know what the other spouse has, what the other spouse accumulated, and what you've accumulated in order to determine things like equalization of net family property. And those sorts of things, right? What would support look like, based on each party's income, things like that. So very simple step would be just gather your last 3 years of notices of assessment and income tax returns, regardless of whether you're self-employed or whether you work for a company and you're on a T4. Those are some simple documents you can start to get ready, start gathering bank statements, credit card statements, those kinds of things. And if you haven't filed your income taxes, which we often find, we get somebody in March or April and they're like, well, I haven't done my taxes yet. Get those taxes filed because you are going to need that throughout the divorce and separation process. So that would be the first. The second I would say, and I think this is just as important, whether or not you have a lawyer, and we always recommend, people do retain a lawyer because family law is not an easy thing to navigate. But regardless of whether or not you do, educate yourself. Yeah. Right? Because you want to know that you're doing your research before you actually, make any kind of decision either way. Are you going to go to mediation? Are you going to go to arbitration? Are you going to go to court? Like, what is this going to look like? What's really important to me? So make sure you understand your rights and responsibilities. Do some research on the various processes that you can go through. Do some research online. There's so many resources available to people going through a divorce. And like I say, we always recommend, obviously, getting legal advice and having a lawyer, but it's also important to educate yourself along the way. You don't want to just simply depend on your lawyer not really knowing, right?
No.
So, there's so many avenues you can take, and which avenue you choose is largely going to depend on the level of conflict, So yeah, I always recommend being represented, but definitely educate yourself on the processes first.
Yeah, because I can imagine that going into it, a lot of people don't know their rights or anything about the process. And it sounds very daunting. And I wouldn't know the first step to take. And I imagine a lot of mistakes are made.
100%. Many people, I've seen this all the time, where people will download what we call a kitchen table separation agreement. They just need a quick separation agreement because they need to get financing, or they need to sell a house quickly and they don't have time to, go to lawyers, get independent legal advice and all that stuff. So then what we find happens later on is like 2-3 years down the road, after the house is sold, the money's all been spent, one of the spouses realizes, maybe there was a spousal support component that I missed out on, or, all of a sudden my ex is doing so much better than me, but how is that fair? Right? Because they never got that legal advice. But once the money's gone, once, that money's already been divided through real estate lawyers, that you can't really go back and change that so easily. So it's an even more expensive, more daunting process, rather than just sitting with a lawyer and getting it done, correctly, doing the exchange of financial disclosure, going through the process in the right way. And one other thing I would say too, just going back to your other question, Laura, of, things you can do to prepare. Build a team, build a support team. And I'm not just talking about a lawyer here, but you really don't want to try to do this alone. So first of all, you do want to hire a really good lawyer, and not just any lawyer. You want to make sure, number one, that lawyer is a good personality fit. I cannot emphasize this enough. Working for a divorce law firm, it's very important to match the client and lawyer, because you're spending a lot of money and you're spending a lot of time communicating with your legal team. So you want to make sure it's a fit, right? And you also want to make sure that your lawyer specializes only in family law. You don't want to hire a generalist, right? Because somebody who does real estate and commercial litigation, things like that, they may not necessarily know all the family law rules and the delicate intricacies involved with family law. So it's very, very important. There's all kinds of complicated financial forms, rules. So you don't want somebody who practices everything. And then you want to also make sure that you find a good therapist or coach. Like our firm is great because we have Michelina, and we provide the emotional support to our clients while they're going through a divorce. And that is so important, because if you don't process the emotional alongside the legal, then there's a disconnect a lot of time between lawyer and client, right? And between, clients don't always prioritize what's important. And then, the legal team's kind of scrambling to help them, and it's harder. So it's very important that they process each together on their own.
So many valid points there, Andrea. And I mean, when you told me about the Riley firm, you had mentioned the whole kind of ecosystem of support and community, and, suggested bringing in Michelina into this conversation because, yes, there's the legal side, but then there's also the mental and emotional side, and the toll that a divorce can take on one's mental health. So, Michelina, how would you say divorce affects an individual's mental health?
So I'm going to say this: divorce impacts every part of your life, your mental and emotional health, your children, if you have any, your family, your friends, your finances, even your work. So the stress of separation touches everything. Even if you're the one who initiated the divorce, it's still a grieving process. You're not just grieving the relationship, you're grieving the life you had, the future you thought you were going to have. And then there's other major lifestyle changes, like downsizing your home, learning to live on one income instead of two, adjusting to seeing your children only part of this time, and even reshaping your daily routines. So you might even lose mutual friends. That's a hard one for some people. And often your spouse's family or your ex's spouse's family, because people that you may have once relied on for childcare or even emotional support are no longer part of your circle. And that's a grieving part too, right? So it's an incredibly challenging transition that can leave people feeling really disoriented, lonely, and uncertain. But it's also an opportunity if you have the right support to rebuild, rediscover yourself, and also create a life that feels authentic and joyful to you.
Yeah. And it really is kind of an opportunity, right? An opportunity to learn and to grow and to be your better self. Can you share some strategies that you use with clients that they can use to manage their mental health during the divorce period?
Yeah, sure. So I'm going to say this. This is how I approach things. So the first thing that I need to do when I'm first meeting a client, and to me, they're not a client, they're a human being, right?
Yeah. Okay.
So I zip it and I just listen. And you have to be a really good listener, because often clients just need to unburden and to release all the emotions that they've been holding on to because they haven't had anyone safe or objective to talk to. So listening attentively and also reflecting back what they've said and asking, hey, how can I best support you at this time? That really makes them feel heard and makes them feel validated. This is important because most of the time people in our lives, they want to fix things for us. Okay. Offering unsolicited advice or sometimes unintentionally make the situation all about themselves.
Yeah.
And that can leave a person that's going through the divorce feeling even more alone and emotionally drained. Okay. We're already emotionally drained, and then it's even more so. So I help our clients learn to speak their truth, speak it respectfully, gracefully. I help them set clear boundaries, and when necessary, and I know this is harsh maybe to hear, but sometimes you need to divorce some friends and family members who are not supportive of your healing process.
Okay.
And it's necessary. So depending on the client and on their situation, I might suggest journaling as a way to slow down the mind and release thoughts and emotions that feel too heavy to say out loud. Okay. And I encourage them to write freely. Anger, profanities, the sadness, because if we keep those emotions bottled up, it can lead to stress-related health issues. Okay. And nobody wants that. I also incorporate breath work, meditation, movement. Doesn't matter what kind of movement, walking, yoga, dancing, just to help clients reconnect with their bodies and calm their nervous system. During stressful times, and we're human, right? People often fall into unhealthy coping habits like overdrinking, emotional eating, binge watching Netflix, and even using some substances, none of which help in the long run or help us move forward. And in fact, they actually take us backwards. Yeah. So I take things slowly with the clients. I help my clients set small, achievable goals, like little wins that rebuild confidence and bring a sense of progress. And then it reminds them that they are capable of creating stability and peace, even in the midst of major life change and chaos.
I love all of those strategies. And I imagine these are strategies that people are not using without a coach or someone like you supporting them. And my guess is if you are meeting them right from the beginning, ultimately it helps speed up their recovery. Is that correct? Because, is that correct?
I think so. Okay. I know that when I went through it myself, I had a coach immediately. And a gentleman by the name of Maston Kip. And I spent a year and a half, almost 2 years with him. And it was also in a group environment. And that totally switched everything for me, right? So I can only say for myself. So as a divorce coach myself, I help clients move through the emotional recovery process with clarity, with structure, and compassionate support. This is really important, to be gentle and to be compassionate, and also to be truthful with them so they don't stay stuck in the pain or the confusion longer than necessary. Because there's so many people that I know, they spend years, decades sometimes, just stuck and not even moving forward. So when someone is going through a divorce, emotions can be extremely overwhelming. Grief, anger, guilt, fear, and even relief. And they can all exist at the same time. It's okay. That's completely normal. But without guidance, people often get caught up in the cycles of overthinking, reacting to their ex is a big one, or making decisions from a place of pain instead of clarity. And we talk about this on our morning meetings all the time, right? So for me, a divorce coach helps to create emotional stability, offering tools, perspectives, and accountability. This is really important too. So I help clients understand what they're feeling, validate those emotions, and then teach them how to regulate their emotion. It's through their nervous system, through breath work, right? Especially vagal breathing, mindfulness, and grounding techniques.
One of the things that, I love coaches for everything, but one of the reasons why I love the idea about a divorce coach in particular is because we all have friends. But the reality is most of my friends haven't been through divorce. And if I'm going through a divorce and I turn to a friend, what do they know? How can they really relate to what I'm going through? And quite often their perspectives are subjective. And so I love that they can turn to you objectively. You can respond to them, support them. And yeah, you've also been through it. But it's also the friend might be one of those friends who they have to divorce themselves, or it could be like beating a dead horse with the friend. And the friend's like, wow, we're having these conversations. They just don't get it. Right. And they might not even want to be that person. And I feel like that makes me sound like a bad friend saying that. But I have friends who have gone through divorce and I'm certainly there for them. But I just think that the friend who hasn't gone through it just doesn't get it. And so it can potentially break down friendships.
Yeah, it can. There's some people who haven't gone through what you've gone through, but they can be there. They are so emotionally in tune with themselves and with others that they can be there for a person. For myself, there's times where I don't know what someone's gone through. Maybe I haven't gone through, but I'm always like, I'm here. Would you like to talk? And if they say no, I'll like, is it okay if I ask you maybe in a week if you'd like to talk again? And they'll say either yes or no. It's about asking permission.
Nice.
It's about asking questions, right? And just listening. A lot of the time people feel like they need to say something, and usually it's always the wrong thing. Just zip it and just hold their hand and look at them in the eye and just go, I can't offer any advice, but I'm going to be here and listen to you. And maybe just hold your hand as you cry, or maybe I can just hold your hand as you weep and as you maybe just work through this. That's really important. And there are some people that you do have to divorce, let's just say, right? And here's the thing. This is what I always say. It doesn't mean that you're good and they're bad, or they're bad and you're good. It just means that you are no longer a match and you have to go your separate ways peacefully.
Yes.
I respectfully bow out and on my way.
I think that's a really nice suggestion, though, for the friends who do want to offer support. It's really about listening and asking, do you want to talk? Letting them know that you're there for them, but not inserting your advice, because they might not want your advice. They just want someone to listen to them.
Exactly. And a lot of time you also have, and sometimes it hurts. And I've been through this as well, where someone's just like, they've been through something really. I had a friend whose mom had passed, and it was a really, really emotional and really difficult time for her. And all she wanted was space. And I had to respect that. I was like, I miss her, and it's been over 6 months, but I have to give her space. And every once in a while, I'll send a heart, or every once in a while, I'll send like a hug emoji, and she replies back. But unless she says to me, hey, I'm ready to talk, I have to leave it. It's not about me. It's about her.
It's true. That's so considerate of you. Yeah. I love that. I imagine, or I'm curious for the individuals who you see, if there's a common theme or a realization that they have about certain things that may have led to the divorce or things that they may have wished they had done differently. Do you come across anything like that?
I love this question. And I'm laughing because I rarely hear clients say, I wish I had done this to prevent my divorce. But what I do hear almost 90% is, I wish I had left sooner. That's what I had a lot of. Okay. So many of us do not, and I'm going to say many, and this is my opinion and my perspective. So people can disagree with me and that's okay. But many of us don't enter relationships and marriages for the right reasons. We think we're choosing love, but often we're seeking someone to fill a void, to give us something that we maybe didn't receive as children from our parents or our caregivers. Okay. We look to our partners to make us feel loved, worthy, or happy. But the truth is no one can give us those things. They can add to our joy, but they can never be the source of it. Okay. Because the reality, and I see people every day, okay, professionally and personally, the reality is most of us are just wounded children in adult bodies, still carrying emotional pain that was never healed. So we unconsciously look for partners who reflect that pain, hoping that this time it will be different, that this person will love us the way that we always needed and wanted to be loved. But true healing begins when we recognize that those unmet needs must be addressed within ourselves. Okay. We need to heal individually and together. It doesn't mean that you have to be completely healed in order to enter a relationship. You can heal individually, but also together. But we must do it before bringing children into this world, because otherwise those unhealed wounds become part of the next generation's story. And my life's work is to help individuals break that cycle and to heal generational trauma, reclaim their sense of self-worth, and rebuild relationships from a place of wholeness rather than need. Because then all we're doing is we just keep bleeding all over people who never caused us any harm to begin with.
Michelina, do you also meet with individuals before getting divorced?
No.
Okay.
They come to the right when they are like ready. And usually, and Mr. Paul Riley says this all the time. Well, I should call him Mr. He doesn't like that, but he's always like, when people come to us, they've already been thinking about this for a year or two or 5 or 10. So I get them as they're going through the process.
So it's almost like what you're saying is, they have that feeling in their gut that this marriage is just not the right fit. And it's wishing they had taken action sooner.
See, here's the thing. We stay for so many reasons. It must be me. I have to stay for the kids. And this is very valid. Okay. How am I going to make it financially? Right. So a lot of it is financial as well. Right. What will my family think? What will my friends think? Nobody else is divorced. I'm going to be a statistic. I'm going to be the like that sore thumb. Like nobody wants to be that. Right. So I always say to clients, I wish I would have, and I wish, well, you know what? Whatever is done is done. Let's just move forward for that. Let's be gentle. Let's be kind to ourselves and compassionate. And let's just say, what am I dealing with now? And how can I move forward now? Because there's nothing you can do about, I should have left 5 years ago, 10 years ago. I should never have married them. What did I learn? Because this is one of the things that I ask myself. And I say this to the clients all the time. The first thing that I asked myself after I decided that enough was enough, that I couldn't stay in this toxic, volatile marriage anymore, I was like, what part of me do I need to heal that thought it was okay to marry a violent, alcoholic. What part of me do I need to heal? Not him, because it had nothing to do with him. It had to do with me. I chose to say yes.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Okay. So it's thinking about yourself and your thinking and your mental state of acceptance versus I think a lot of people are thinking about the other person and how they can change that other individual.
We talk about this all the time with the clients and the people that I work with. And I'm like, I don't want to hear about him anymore. We've talked about that for the last 10 visits. I don't want to talk about him. I don't want to talk about her. I want to talk about you and how we're going to move forward, because you cannot control anybody else. You can only control yourself, right?
Yes.
And you have to this is not about blame. Okay. This is about taking radical responsibility for your part in the break up of the marriage or the partnership, whatever you want to call it, right? Because there was things that I was scared. Absolutely. But take responsibility. I stayed because I was scared. I stayed because of the kids. I stayed, whatever the case may be. Just take responsibility and then move on and stop putting blame, because blame doesn't help anybody. Just move on. I'm working with one individual, one beautiful human being, and her ex-husband did a lot of very interesting things, and she makes it a point that the kids are exchanged at their home. There's no awkwardness. She's like, it doesn't matter what he did. I need to make sure that my kids can see that mom and dad can talk, that mom and dad can meet at the house, and there's no awkwardness. So she puts it in perspective and is like, no, this is about my kids. I love that. Yeah. It's hard to do. It's hard. I'm not saying it's easy, but it's hard, but it can be done.
Yeah, she's thinking beyond her own needs and is thinking about the role modeling that she wants to do for her kids and the impact that it'll have on them. I can imagine how challenging that would be, but incredible.
It is challenging, right? Yeah. But she's like, hey, it's going to be hard and I'm going to do it anyway, right? It's going to be tough. I'm going to be a little bit scared, but I'm going to do it anyway.
Yeah, that's amazing. Okay, so each of you, we've talked about the legal side and the emotional side, but there's also a third component, a third type of support that you two provide to the clients, and that's the community support, which really got me excited when you told me about it, Andrea. So can you tell us a little bit about the community group and the support that you provide to clients?
Absolutely. I'm so proud of the community we've created. It's called the Empowered Exit Divorce Community. And really what it is just a safe space where clients get to meet with Michelina once a month and candidly and openly talk about issues, vent, talk about things that they're facing as they navigate the divorce process. And what I love most about the group is that, so it's all of our clients are welcome. It's included in, when they retain us, they get to be a part of this group. And we also welcome other people as well going through divorces, not just our clients. But what I love is just people who are going through it, providing other people with support. It's not just Michelina educating and helping them and giving them tools, also them giving each other tools. It's them, saying, yeah, I've been there and I get it. Or, oh yeah, I know, where you can meet at the courthouse. I've been to that one. It could be something as simple as, give them directions to get to the step, how to meet your lawyer in court. Or it could be something as complex as, yeah, I went through that same issue and this is, how we got out of it, or this is how I'm feeling when I was there. It creates this feeling of I'm not alone.
Yeah.
And that's what our clients feel. And I've gotten nothing but positive feedback from the clients who've attended, and they just really feel seen, heard, and just supported. And it just relieves so much of the anxiety. And then, of course, Michelina gives them such powerful tools that they can use outside of the group, grounding exercises, breathing, talking about how to deal with anxiety and stress during the process. And obviously she offers the extra layer of having been through it and having, been doing this work and working in this space for so long. So it's a super powerful group, and it's a great community. And it's just something that I'm really, really proud of that this firm has developed.
There's so much power in community. Like regardless of what we're doing or where we are in life, there are always going to be individuals who are like-minded and who have gone through this or going through the same thing. So coming together and being able to support one another. And again, like you said, just share little tips and tricks and experiences has such an impact.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
It makes people feel seen and heard and valued, and they come off of the call, and we at least get 1 or 2 emails from a client, after that. Thank you so much. That was so powerful. Like, I really enjoyed the session. And we get a couple repeats who come on, every month, and they become like the anchors, the pillars, the support system for other clients who are maybe newer and just starting the process. And it makes them feel good, because you feel good when you're giving. You feel good when you're helping. That's where true joy, I think, and happiness comes from. It's not from trying to make yourself happy. It's from trying to help others, right?
Absolutely. So to clarify, this is offered to your clients, but also anyone can join.
Yeah, anyone can join the community. We can share the link as well. It's a very inexpensive commitment as well. This isn't like something you have to pay thousands and thousands of dollars for. It's quite inexpensive for the support that they're getting. It's great value. Even if they just, they're going through it and just don't want to feel alone. They want a little bit of extra support. Every month we have a different theme. We do post on Eventbrite monthly. So, people who are non-clients are more than welcome to sign up. It's kind of a drop in and pay kind of scenario. You pay for what you use. But it's a great community, super supportive. So yeah, we're very proud of that.
That's great. Andrea, I want to go back to individuals who are looking for a lawyer to start. And let's just say they come to the Riley law firm. What are some questions they should be asking, and how can they determine if this lawyer is the right fit for them?
That's a great question, because personality fit is, I believe, one of the most important things. So I think one thing they need to ask is, they need to give an example of their scenario, the narrative, from their perspective, and say, first of all, how would you handle this? In what process would you engage to handle this? Because some lawyers are litigators. They just automatically go to court, and they're they're used to high conflict situations, and, they're cutthroat. Mm-hmm. And other lawyers are more alternative dispute resolution based. They want to maybe try to negotiate, try resolution, try mediation, things like that. So I think one of the things, if I were a client coming in for my first time, I would give a narrative and say, here's the situation. Depending on the level of conflict, obviously, and the client knows that best, which process would you employ to try to help us resolve this? And that doesn't always mean that strategy or that process is going to work. I mean, there's been many times we've tried mediation. It hasn't worked. We've had to go the litigation route. Flexibility is very much a part of the process. But I think you're going to get from the outset, is this lawyer an aggressive kind of, jump into litigation? Because there are lawyers out there, thankfully none of the lawyers in our firm, but there are lawyers out there who want to litigate because it's expensive. Court process is expensive, right? So just to get in the door of the courthouse, you're looking at spending probably $7,500 to $10,000, just to even get in front of, get your application in front of a judge. Whereas negotiations, it takes longer, but actually, I wouldn't say it takes longer. It doesn't take longer. That's not true. Court is a very, very long process. Some people get tied up in it for years and years. But the negotiation process, you're going in amicably, you're, writing a letter, you're exchanging disclosure, and you're trying to come to a resolution. And a lawyer's going to draw up an agreement. So I think how you're going to handle it is one thing. And then just, asking questions about, just to educate themselves, what would support look like this? What would equalization look like? Again, a good lawyer, when they come onto an interview or a consultation, is going to be prepared. They're going to be able to give you those answers. They're going to be able to say, yeah, you know what? I've run the numbers based on your scenario, and here's what a reasonable position looks like. Here's what you should be doing, right? Those are the kinds of things. You want to make sure, too, that your lawyer has experience in whatever the main issues are. For example, if you're going through a farm divorce. You want to make sure maybe that lawyer has experience dealing with other farm divorces.
Okay.
Or, if your decisions are mostly parenting time related, you want to make sure, does that lawyer have experience dealing with co-parenting, parenting time issues? Okay. So those are some of the things I'd look at.
Okay. Oh, that's very handy. Okay. Thank you. I mean, not that I'm thinking of divorce, but in my head, I'm like, what would be some of the things that I would have to consider? So it really gets you thinking. Just because your friend may have used someone doesn't mean that that person is the right fit for you, because you may have different needs and a different personality type as well.
Yeah. And personality type. I can't emphasize that enough, because what I see happening a lot of the time, not a lot of the time, but, oftentimes when a client, either they're coming to our firm because they've left a lawyer that they didn't like, or, something like that, what they do is they'll come to us and then they have to pay more money for us to get up to speed on the file and for us to review everything. So it's an expensive process to change lawyers. So you don't want to do that midway through or right before a court date. Then you've got to adjourn the court date because the new lawyer has to get up to speed. That's what you see happen a lot of the time. That's why it's important up front to make sure, is this somebody that I would want to work with? Is this somebody I could talk to every day? Is this somebody I could get along with and have a phone call with? And don't be afraid. One thing I have to add too is, don't be afraid to tell the lawyer how you like to be communicated with. Some people, we have clients who never check their emails. They are, the farmers, or, they have all kinds of other things going on. They're an older generation. They might not really correspond well with email. So just, don't be afraid to let the lawyer know, hey, you know what, I really prefer phone calls to, emails, or I really prefer in-person to virtual, or whatever the case may be. That's important.
Wow. Okay. Very helpful. Michelina, if you could give any sort of advice to anyone starting the divorce process, what would it be?
I'm going to say this. Be gentle. Be compassionate with yourself. Okay. I'm going to say you're going to have to drop into your body. And what do I mean by that? I'm not going to say meditation. I'm going to say do daily breath work. Okay. Because things are going to come up, and that means feelings might come up. Emotions might come up. Let them all out. Journal and go and find your tribe. Those are the people that are going to support you. Those are the ones that are not going to tell you what to do. They're going to ask you how they can support you. Those are the people that are going to lift you up. And they're going to be there to hold your hand when you're crying, when you need help with your kids. That's what I'm going to recommend. And get yourself books, like anybody like Wayne Dyer, Gabor Mate, Dr. Shefali. Some of those might work for me, but they might not work for you. So try different things until you find what works for you.
Okay. That's great. Thank you so much. Andrea, I'd love to know, what are some of the biggest mistakes you see clients make?
That's a great question. And it goes back to one of the points that Michelina made earlier, and I wrote it down. She said, making decisions from a place of pain. And I would add, making decisions from a place of frustration, anger, while you're still grieving. You're grieving the loss of a relationship, of a life you thought you were going to have. And now you're going to be making some really big decisions about dividing property, about co-parenting children. And that's one of the biggest mistakes I see, is when people don't necessarily get the support they need on the emotional side, making decisions from that place of pain. What do I mean by that? I mean, I've seen in a case conference brief, somebody attach Costco receipts for toilet paper and groceries. I've seen people fight over silverware, over, couches, over furniture. And when you look at it in the grand scheme of things, I mean, taking a step back from, third party and being in the industry that I'm in, I mean, we know it doesn't make sense financially to fight over silverware or a couch, because you're going to spend more money, for a lawyer to write a letter about it than you're going to ever get back, or that piece of furniture or silverware is actually worth. But the thing is when you're stuck in anger and you're in pain, you don't see that. You're just, you're so in it that you can't take a step back. You can't see the forest through the trees. And again, that's also where we see children being put in the middle. We see, parents attacking other parents and saying, your mother or your father is this, and putting the children essentially right in the center of the conflict, or getting, a children's lawyer involved and the child having to then talk to a lawyer. It's tough on them when kids get put in the litigation process, but it all comes from a place of pain. It comes from making decisions from a place of pain. So the best thing that people can do is get that help on the emotional side and let their lawyer help them. Let their lawyer ask the lawyer, is this worth fighting over? Is it worth, because the lawyer 9 times out of 10 is going to say, no, don't do it.
It's almost like having that question written out. Is this worth fighting over? Right. And like having it somewhere where you can constantly turn to that and asking yourself that, right? Like, is the silverware or the toilet paper worth fighting over? But it, again, like you said, it's so handy having Michelina there and you as well, I'm sure, Andrea, right? Who can allow them to take a step back and see the big picture. And it's like, no. In the grand scheme of things, the toilet paper receipts don't really matter.
Exactly. And that's the most extreme case I've seen, but I've seen it so many times. And it all comes back to making emotional decisions and not trusting necessarily the process or the lawyer. Okay. Let your lawyer take care of the legal stuff and let them advise you on it. And don't do things that, they don't advise you to do generally. Your lawyer's there to protect your interests. And when they strategize and they give you, something to do, just do it. They say, don't overanalyze, don't overthink it, right?
Yeah. Okay. Thanks for sharing that, Andrea. That's wonderful.
Of course. No problem.
If people want to get in touch with you or the law firm itself, how can they reach out or how can they find you?
Yeah, so they can reach out through our website. It's just therileyfirm.ca. Okay. I'm happy to post our contact information as well. Okay. We also have a few locations, so I can post our general phone number if anyone wants to give us a call. We have a fantastic intake clerk, Susan, who's really empathetic, great with clients. She'd be happy to speak to the potential clients. And they can email us as well, and I'll post our email address.
Okay. Thank you, Andrea. And thank you both, Andrea and Michelina, for being here and chatting about this. I hope that we have been able to connect with listeners on this topic and have inspired or motivated some individuals to really take action and seek the support that they need. So thank you.
Thank you. It's a great conversation, Laura.
Thank you for tuning into this episode. For more tools, resources, or support for your household, check us out on Instagram @Intentional Household. And for more downloadable resources and more, visit our website, www.intentionalhousehold.com.